Good morning, all of you. It's absolutely my pleasure to welcome all of you today. I can hear all the warm greetings passing around. So I know it's already time and we have, I think we're 3 minutes past. So let me begin. I'd like to first welcome John and Vijay, who have very graciously agreed to do this session today. And I'm sure we're all waiting with bated breath to see how this whole, session transpires. So let me introduce you. I know most of you know John and Vijay, but um, formally let me introduce both of them to you. So John Serrao, he's an MCC coach and has spent about 25 years in the corporate space, heading finance, international marketing, and then starting his own company in the field of training, facilitation, and coaching. In the last 20 odd years, he has focused on leadership development, business acumen, innovation, and coaching, and has worked over levels in a variety of Fortune 100 and 500 companies. He's also a keen golfer, a saxophonist, and has traveled about 25 plus countries. So quite a wanderer there, John. So let me come to Vijayalakshmi S. Is a full name. Many of us call her just Vijay. She's also a master certified coach, an MCC, and a multifaceted management professional. She has over 20 years of experience in consulting and human resources with a background in law and an accredited meditator. She is a coaching evangelist and a volunteer for Coaches for You. Her coaching capabilities include executive leadership, wellness and life coaching, working with both individuals and teams. Presently, she serves on the board of the International Coach Federation Chennai chapter as the president-elect. Passionate about all things sports and fitness, Vijay is a certified kettlebell and GFM. I don't know what that means, a movement instructor as well. So I think I'm pretty excited to kind of discover more about this session today. So what I will request you all to do is this session is going to last for about 1.5 hours, which is 90 minutes. And I think how John and Vijayalakshmi have um, designed it, it's going to be a very, very interactive session. And it's going to uncover a lot of stuff which you want to know about coaching. I would request you all, if you're not speaking, to please keep your mics on mute. And if possible, also go off camera as the session begins, which would kind of prevent us with any bandwidth issues during the session. And as and when you're requested to participate, you can unmute yourself and ask a question and interact as we go along. So without further ado, I would really like to, Nita, if you could just unmute yourself. So I would like to pass on the baton to Vijay and John, and I will be in the background to savor what's happening through the session today. So over to you, Vijay and John.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, Anu, for that very warm and generous introduction, I must say. And I can say this on behalf of John, my good friend John here. We're both so excited about this. And, putting together pretty much learnings from many years into a 90-minute capsule is indeed quite challenging. So we will try our best. Yeah, what say, John?
Yeah.
Right. So, this webinar is called The Magic of Coaching. So I'm not sure whether we're going to do any magic here, but we hope to share some of our magical experiences with you. And between John and I think we have lots of common, but also lots of diverse experiences. Yeah. And we were just talking about, what probably we should talk about. And I know there were, some indications given in that lovely mailer that went around. But we wanted to start this with knowing from you as to what you have in your mind today. John, you must say why you've put down embarrassing questions there.
Yeah, they'll find out in just a moment.
Okay, so what I'm going to do right away is we're going to launch into a poll. So my request to all of you is these are all, and you'll have maybe one or two coming along your way. These are all very simple sort of questions, but do take part. So I think we have about 130 people now. Hopefully we'll have some more coming in. Participate wholeheartedly in the poll. Yeah. Okay, so the first question here, and I've just launched it. Can you see the screen? What are you most curious about in the session today? Real life coaching examples topping the charts so far.
Yeah, and also what's really happens in a coaching session. There's a lot of interest in that as well.
Okay, so with your permission, I'm just going to be closing the poll in about 2 seconds. Is that okay? Yeah. And poll. And we will share the poll results. So John, you're a consultant too. So what's your sense of this data?
Yes. Yes. So what we see now here is that more than half of the people seem to want real life coaching examples, and we will do our very best to do that without compromising on confidentiality. But there is also about 40% of the people seem to want what really happens in a coaching session. And so we are going to cover that as well. And then we have almost equal for what the concept of coaching is, role of coach, how is it different from other forms of support, and who is it for. So we see a fairly even mix on those.
Yeah, and so that makes me feel pretty good because I think we've come ready to talk about all this, right, John?
Yeah.
Okay, so great. So let me stop that for a minute and let's plunge right in. Yeah. So John, let's start a little bit about our own understanding of coaching. You've been in this space for a long time. And so why don't you start off with your earliest experiences with coaching and how you see it?
Thanks, Vijay. When I think about the earliest experiences of coaching, I have to go back to my school and my college days. And I remember playing a lot of soccer, played for school, played for college. And what I remember is having a soccer coach, right? A football coach. And and then over the years, well, now for close to 25 odd years, I've been playing golf. And I've had a variety of golf coaches. And but back in school and college, we also had what we call as coaching institutes, right? Like the IIMs or the IITs or the IS and those type of things. So in many ways, this word coaching seems to have a lot of connotations. And when I think about my experiences, I find that predominantly my coaches have all um, told me what to do. So it has been a process of advocacy as opposed to a process of inquiry. In fact, the only exception to that rule, Vijay, is that I remember one golf coach of mine His name is Tarun. And Tarun was one of those guys who was very passionate about coaching. And he was one of those guys who actually asked me questions and allowed me to figure it out for myself. And I'll give you a simple example. Given that close to 60% of the people want examples, I'm going to share an example. So the example that comes to my mind is that, for a right-handed golfer to be able to move the ball from the right to the left on the golf course is of tremendous advantage. It also means that you are correctly hitting the golf shot. So it means your technique is good. And I was struggling because I was hitting it the other way. Now you know why I've had 7 different odd coaches, golf coaches in my life. I've been taking a long time to figure out some of these things. And so he said something interesting to me, Vijay. He said, John, you have the net on the right-hand side, which is to safeguard the balls going out on a practice range. And he said, John, why don't you try and hit the ball over the net? Which means I had to hit it to the right. And the thing about that, Vijay, is that of all the coaches that I've had, he's the only coach, and this are some of the few things I remember. And it wasn't in the telling that I remember, but it was in the asking. So much so that even today, in the last few months, I've been thinking of the same question myself, and I've again started reapplying because my game had kind of faltered a little bit. So that's what I wanted to just share with you, Vijay, in terms of some of my golfing experiences.
And when you talk about that, John, well, of course, I think you've had, what I'm picking up is some brainwave moments there, right? I think my experience with coaching also has something to do with the sport field. And while, I was lucky enough to have coaches ever since I remember having played competitive sport, I think a lot of them did what you were talking about. And I think my first brush with really understanding, what does that human called the coach do, was when I turned, a self-acclaimed coach. And, because we didn't have funds to hire a coach in college where I played for a team, and, the team itself was so little, and it was a ladies' team. So you can imagine the kind of importance that was given. So here I was, I just took the coach hat, wore it on, and I said, okay, I'm going to be player and I'm going to be coach. And when I look back at those, 30 years, 20 years ago, just seems like I could have done so many things differently. But I realized that, being in that role is one of, is one of responsibility, because you're taking a very different level of responsibility. So I did carry a lot on my shoulders, only to realize later that I needn't have. But we'll come to that in a bit.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that, Vijay. Vijay, given what we have discussed so far, if you had to define coaching, what might that sound like?
So, John, I could throw in my own definition of coaching, but I think a great place for us to start is with a widely accepted definition of coaching, which is from the International Coach Federation. And, ICF, where you and I hold our credentials from, and I think a whole lot of coaches in India, I think maybe 700 plus coaches, and worldwide as well, 30,000 coaches worldwide on the last count, is a gold standard in coaching. And I think we can pick up that definition and work with it for the purpose of our webinar today. Is my screen visible, John?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, by the way, folks, John put in this cartoon, so I'm still waiting to know his explanation of that, but maybe we'll save that up for questions. So simply put, coaching is, a process of partnering with clients, and, sometimes people call them coachees, but I prefer the word clients, in a manner that is both thought-provoking and creative. Yeah. And what does this help us with? It inspires the client to maximize their potential in both personal and professional domains. I remember, the first time when I read this definition, it took me a while it was a very simplistic definition, it took me a while to really unpack the different parts of it. And even today, I continue to do so. Whenever, I'm in a moment of doubt, I come back to this definition and say, hey, does this sit well? Do I live this definition in all that I do and all that I be as a coach? And what stands out in this definition are a couple of things. One, of course, is that coaching is about equals. There are many other relationships, and John spoke about telling, which happens a lot, in many other domains, including sports coaching, is that here the coach and the client are equal partners, which means that they bring in as much into this relationship as they should. Yeah, partnership is about that. Also, there is a certain expectation from this partnership for it to be able to provoke thought and creativity in the human who has come in here to this wonderful relationship and partnership called coaching. Yeah. And, there's also this word called potential, which to me, I think is at the heart of this whole thing. And probably as we go along in the webinar, we will unpack that a little more. But yeah, this is the definition of coaching that I want to bring up today as something pretty powerful and something which I think lays the foundation for the magic. Is there something coming up for you, John, when you read this definition? Anything?
Yeah, in fact, I was thinking of my same coach, Vijay, my golf coach. And what I realized when I see the definition is that this guy was truly partnering with me. And I say that in a way where he would be completely focused on me. He would not take calls. He would not even talk to other people, not even say hi, even though we were on the range and in a public place. And then, when I posed him certain problems, he would turn that around and ask me what I think I should be doing. So to give you that example where I asked him that I want to hit the ball from the right to the left, he said, try hitting it over the net. And to my mind, that was a creative insight that occurred to this coach in that moment, where he came up with something that could potentially ignite some insight within myself. And when I look at over the years of my playing golf, I realize that he has truly helped me to reach my potential. And I would say that I haven't yet reached there. I'm optimistic of playing even better. Yes, I'm truly optimistic of playing even better. Yes.
Yeah. Great.
So Vijay, given the fact that you are a master coach, and we have talked about this whole process of coaching, there's also an expectation with the participants of what this process looks like. So I wanted to pose a question to you as to if you could take a moment and describe to us this process, and also try and answer this one question that all of us have, which is, what is it about coaching that makes it effective?
Thanks, John. That itself is a thought-provoking question. Because it just makes me, ask myself, what's the real deal? Yeah, and what's the essence? So instead of sort of trying to put everything together in a sentence and just send it back to you with curiosity, let me do this, right? Let me start with where it all starts. Yeah, the start of it all, and for people to evaluate coaching, to look at coaching, to take coach support from a coach. The starting point is goals. Yeah, goals as in a goal that you want to achieve. Sometimes This goal is also simply about saying, I'm at point A and I'd like to go to point B. Some clients have clarity about a very broad and vague point B. Some clients are very clear about what the point B is. But irrespective, there is some point B. So you might then ask me, so Vijay, is coaching then only for those who are very clear about what they want? And, you know, a lot of young adults I work with tell me that we don't even know where we want to go. Yeah. And that's a good place to be in too. What do I mean by that? I think as long as you know you're not happy with your point A and you want to move somewhere from point A, that's a good place to be as well. So sometimes clients don't use the word or language called goals. They come in with, you know, a topic or an issue or a problem, right? So the starting point is either a problem or an opportunity. And so there's one thing that's common to both is that the client wants to get out of the inertia and move ahead. So, you know, this whole kinetic energy is quite important to the coaching relationship. Yeah. And what could be these goals? What kinds of goals? And, you know, we can talk for a long time about these, but broadly, I think goals can either be very personal goals, life goals. What do you want to do with your life, your vision? What kind of a life do you want to live? The lifestyle that you want. It could be wellness goals. You know, it could be simply saying, I just want to be healthy. I want to be free from disease. Coming into the professional domain, it could be about saying, you know, how do I chart my career path for the next 5 years? What do I really want to achieve through my profession? What is the legacy I want to leave? Simply saying, you know, which field should I pursue in college? Or to say, how do I make my relationships work? How do I parent better? So, you know, the range is so wide, and coaching does not differentiate. Yeah, at least the ICF for sure does not differentiate that it has to be this kind of coaching or that kind of coaching. The other dimension about goals is we often think that, you know, there's only a broad high level goal that the client comes to the coach with. But, you know, in every conversation, and I think you can relate to that, John, and a lot of our coaches here today on the call can relate to it. Every session, every conversation also has a goal, has a mini goal. Yeah, it's a bit of a milestone that you're talking about. Every time you come back, the coach and the client are connecting, you pick a milestone that you want to work into the larger scheme of the goals that you have set. So I just want to, you know, take a pause here with just one thing, saying that in all of this discipline called coaching has a beautiful future focus. It is about creating a better tomorrow. And that's one of the reasons I feel so positive when I work with clients, because it just gives me the feeling that irrespective of what's happened and whatever challenges you may have, as long as you have a desire to want to go ahead, there is a way. And lots of the way lies within you. I don't know, just feeling a bit reflective here, John, as I said that.
Thanks, Vijay. That was really interesting. And also, it was very heartening because, you know, as people, we often have issues, challenges, or we are looking for opportunities. And more often than not, we don't know who to talk to. Usually it's like a friend or a family member, and often you're told, right? And I think what you have shared is very telling in that sense. So, given Vijay, what you have shared so far, what kind of data do you have that might show where you know what kind of potential coaching applications are there? Is there something that you could kind of share with us?
Yeah, I do, John. You are asking a person who loves data. So I do have some data for you there.
You're a magician, Vijay. You're able to pull out data from your hat. Okay.
All right. So this is a, I don't know. I mean, this kind of at least makes me feel it's pretty representative of what I see in my practice as a coach, and what also other coaches tell us, right? And you're the guy who analyzes. So you analyze this data, John.
Yeah. Yeah. So, this is basically from the ICF Global study from 2017. And if you look here, um, there seems to be a fair amount of mix. So mix that varies from things like managing your work-life balance, for example, or improving aspects in the corporate world with respect to things like business management. Or for individuals, it might be, these little things that keep niggling us, right? Things like self-esteem and self-confidence. I've had a lot of people in the last few weeks that have reached out to me and have shared about things that they would like to work in this area. This whole aspect of feeling good about myself. But then there are people who are looking for career opportunities. And the COVID-19 has been a great time for people to reflect on what they have been doing so far and what kind of career opportunities they are looking for. So we see a lot of applications here, and it appears that there is a lot of potential, Vijay, that is inherent in our ability to reach out and take help, right? And I know that you alluded to the maximizing potential in the ICF definition. So if you had to talk to us a little more about what that means, what would that be like? This whole aspect about maximizing my potential, as it were.
So, John, again, we come back to the heart of the matter, so to say, right? Potential is a very powerful thing, and as you probably know by now that I find comfort in definitions. When you go back to a very pristine view of potential, right? It's essentially, um, you know, an inherently unrecognized capacity, something that's not yet found manifestation. And we see potential from, very scientific domains like physics in the form of energy to potential used in the context of ability of people. And simply put, if you look at a physical dimension, right, it is about that something that's, waiting to be released through some form of change, change of matter. And we see that as energy. Similarly, with individuals, it's also about this innate capacity to change. And that is what potential is all about. And oftentimes, for this potential to really find its form and manifestation, right? Something like coaching, a space like coaching. You talked about your coach, right? What stood out for me was that relationship. A very safe and sacred space where you can explore yourself actually plays a very important role in manifestation of potential, from potential energy to kinetic energy. And John, I've known you for a long time now, and no better person to talk about that relationship that coaching allows for, that allows for this manifestation of potential.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you for sharing a little bit about the whole aspect on the potential part. Uh, and you're right. A big part of realizing that potential happens in that partnership. You mentioned in the definition that the partnership is about two equals, and that is true. It's about people in that relationship. And When I think about my coach, my golfing coach, for example, what stood out for me is that his ability to create that trust and intimacy with you. One of the things I have realized in this whole aspect of coaching is the space that our coaches can create to enable me as their client to share with them freely. And I'm often reminded of the fact that many of us have a lot of fears that we grapple with, right? And we are struggling to share those fears. And as we find our coach being willing to be themselves and allowing us to be ourselves, in that whole process, um, the trust and intimacy builds up. What kind of fears are we talking about? We are talking about fears, for example, of rejection, fears
Mm.
for inclusion, for example, the fears of not being heard out or not being respected. And one of the things that has in this whole aspect of relationship and partnership that comes to my mind is this ability of our coaches to listen. Now, when we talk about listening, it is such a simple skill in that sense. But as I have delved more and more into the art and science of coaching, I've realized that this one aspect of listening is so hard to really do and really do it masterfully.
Mm.
And certainly for me, it is a work in progress. But there is the other part to that, Vijay, and that part is to do with your presence. It's really about when you are with your client, how present are you? I'm often reminded of conversations I would have with my bosses, for example, in the corporate sector. And I would go for a meeting to their offices. And, when they were talking to me, they were busy taking other calls and talking to some other people, and there was constant distraction. And now, when I think about it, I realize that back then I thought that was the normal thing to do. But I realized that being able to give that undivided time, space, and attention. And when I mean by attention, it is not only physical attention, but it is mental attention. It's also emotional attention. It's really your whole presence, which you bring to bear on that relationship in a complete way that enables that partnership to blossom and to grow. So that is what I wanted to share a little bit about on partnership. Vijay, you have any thoughts here on partnership?
Um, yeah, John, you actually took me back again a little bit on time, right? And I go back, and this is an example quite close to my heart, actually. I go back, to my school days, when I used to play basketball for my team,
Yeah.
and I used to be, yeah, quite a power-packed player. Yeah, it does not show through with my form, but yeah. So we used to have this coach, right? And when we were at a pretty, we were in the league. So our school had hired this national guy, right? 6 foot something, towering, huge guy, wonderful human being, right? And very angry, right? So you wouldn't often really sort of have a conversation or something with him. You would do, right? But beyond all that, one day, right, there was something that happened that even now, I love narrating this story to my children. So we were, I think, in a pre-final kind of, warm-up session. And so we were practicing some techniques which we would try on the opposing team, opponent team. So, and I played a lot of defense, right? And I pretty much, I was like the go-to person for defense. So coach called me, and he just picked on me and said, "Hey, you know what? Come mark me." I mean, I couldn't even think, right? I just froze. I look at the math, right? I'm at 5 foot something. The guy is at 6+. He's huge, he's aggressive, and I'm puny, right? This is the physical. And I just didn't move. I said no. And you know, on one hand, it was that fear, on the other hand, it was his wrath. And I was stuck, you know. And he just came and said, he just said one thing to me. He said, defend me like you always would. And do whatever it takes. Bring all of you when you do that. And I cannot tell you, John, how empowered I felt, how creative, how resourceful, how whole I felt that day, right? I didn't feel small anymore. And I pretty much actually, you know, prevented 1 or 2 baskets, right? Which is like fabulous. I don't know what happened. So if he had not sort of said what he did to me, right? He didn't push me, he didn't order me, he just left me with that. And so I can so connect to your bit about the relationship with this coach.
Yeah.
If I did not have trust in that relationship, it was not safe for me. I wouldn't have tried.
Yeah. That's a beautiful example, Vijay. And what that tells me is that your coach believed in you, and you were able to dig inside into your own self to become resourceful and come out with stuff that you didn't think was possible, right? He was twice your size, so I can imagine what you must have gone through. So, so when we started this whole session, Vijay, you know, the initial slide said the magic of coaching. So, what is all this thing about this magic of coaching? Could you share a little bit about what happens?
Yeah.
How does this magic happens?
So honestly, last night, John, when I was just thinking about this, right? Is it just a fancy title for a webinar? Like all good marketers do. But, you know, and then I said, no, it's not. You know, I really think there is. And let me try. Yeah, I'm going to attempt this bit, John. And, you know, because sometimes what we feel, it's hard to articulate, but I think I will certainly try. Yeah. So this relationship, right, that got built so far. So we're sort of telling a story, right? Two people have come in. They worked on creating a beautiful. They've spoken goals. They broadly know where they want to go. They've spent a lot of time narrowing it down, session by session, at the whole engagement. And there's a coach like you who has created that beautiful space, right? With all that he or she has been, a space of trust, intimacy, confidentiality, safety. Yeah. So this I think is half of the magic having happened. By the way, it's beneath the scenes. It's behind the scenes. So what happens in the scenes, right? And again, it's a little hard to put into words as to what really, you know, happens in the coaching relationship, because every relationship is different, right? But let me try and connect a few threads. I think there are 2 very important things that happen as part of a coaching process or a relationship. And a lot of us coaches are, we see that in our competencies that we need to build as coaches. But it's also about manifesting them. So there are 2 things. The first one is communication. A simple thing like communication. And the second thing is about evoking awareness. Going back to my own example, there was some awareness that was evoked in me. Of course, what happened there was very simplistic. It was in the moment, right? And maybe sometimes it's just easier to do it on a sports field. But when we coaches, you know, get into this relationship, our training allows us to do both. And what do I mean by communication? What does communication allow in a relationship? Look back at some of your best relationships in your life. Yeah, be it with a friend, a spouse, a parent, a mentor. These are those relationships where communication has flowed so freely. Communication has allowed you to get into a process of expressing yourself. So the kind of communication in that relationship allows for beautiful, authentic self-expression of the client. So even now, the way I think I'm able to talk, without doubting myself, is because of the way you have invited me, John. And also I must acknowledge, it's also the system, right? This, 130 people in this room who I know it feels safe for me to talk, to not be judged. I know there are some masterful coaches, people with a lot more experience than I have in this room. But I'm able to talk because you, holding a space for me, though not as a coach, and also the space is allowing me to do that. In all the silence, right? I've not heard a single phone ringing or, a single background noise or a single sort of interjection here today in this room. That silence also is part of communication. It allows me to be in the flow. So what am I doing when I get into a state of flow? Is I am coming in touch and being aware of what's going on within me, right? And that is also part of the magic, that unrestrained flow. So you did speak about listening, right? That's a skill on which all of us coaches undergo a lot of training, and we call it active listening. Active listening means you're listening to that person fully, wholly, through the spoken, through the unspoken, through the body, through the energy, all of it, you're listening, right? Suspending all judgment in the back of your mind. And when you listen like that, the person is bound to bring out whatever they were holding back and to talk about their own situation. Is it also just listening? No, communication is another very important piece to it called communicating. The coach is also communicating. It's a two-way street, right? And he communicates how? He communicates, she communicates directly, and we call it direct communication. So all sometimes I need to do is to just say what struck me from who you were being. And so, John, if I were to, for a moment, wear this coach's hat and tell me, if you were to, as a coach, listen to what I'm saying just now and communicate, what would you say?
So what stood out to me, Vijay, was your passion, right? I could sense your passion. I could sense your authenticity. I could sense the deep belief you have in the uh, whole subject of coaching, right? And the fact that magic can happen in sessions like this. That's what struck me. Yeah.
And, John, in all you said, it now gives me more energy to go deeper, to talk and bring out more things as to whatever question you asked me, right? And all you did was just to play back to me what you picked up with no judgment. And sometimes that could be critical too, and that's okay. Our relationship allows for me to be challenged as well, right? And that brings me to the second part of evoking awareness. When all of this happens, there is a certain learning and insight that gets generated within me, right? About my goal and about what I came for, what I came to you for, right? And in your doing pretty much, pretty less, you're actually allowing me to be pretty big. Yeah. In littleness is the largeness of your client. And so the other thing which contributes to the magic is my insight, which happens because of the things I'm learning. Learning about what? Learning about not just what my goal was, but learning also about who I am, right? I'm learning that the next time I come into a room like this, I don't even have to have those 1 or 2% of self-doubt and belief as to who's there, what are they thinking? Will I be able to talk about what I know with ease? The next time I know that my passion, right, and my belief will take me through. So I have learned not just about my problem or my goal, but about myself. And in all this, I see magic. So to just go back to your question, who is the magician here? Right? Is it you? Is it me? I think a little bit of both, but more so, it's the space. It's the relationship you and I share, which allows for this magic. But that being said, John, is it all about feeling something magical and feeling good and, saying, yeah, great, high five, and I'm back to my old self tomorrow when I leave this room? You wonder, right? I mean, in the moment, we do so many things. So how do you sustain this magic, John? And how do you do that with your clients?
So thank you Lee, for that very passionate exposition of the magic of coaching. But you're right. In many ways, it is for the client a journey into their inner selves where they really understand a little more about themselves. And for the coach, for those of you who are aspiring to be coaches, for example, it's also a big journey into your own inner self. And what I mean by that, and I'm going to, maybe move away from the topic for just a moment and come back to the question that Vijay raised, to say that the journey of a coach is all about being, to be in that space of being, um, and to take those learnings and put it into practice in your own life. So one of the things that Vijay said was about non-judgment, for example. How do you be non-judgmental in a coaching relationship? And that presupposes that you have had the opportunity to practice being non-judgmental in a non-coaching relationship. And you and I have ample opportunities to do that every day in our families, with our friends, our peers, our co-workers. We have opportunity to either judge them, and when I say judge them, I don't mean um, making a decision, but I mean in terms of, say, moral rights or wrongs, for example, or a different way of doing things. And how do we stay in a space of allowing that person to be who they are? One of my favorite authors, who's been an American psychotherapist for many years and who's inspired me greatly, is Carl Rogers. And one of the things that Carl Rogers talks about is this whole aspect of being yourself in the coaching relationship. So it's very important for us as coaches to be able to learn to practice some of these things and put it to heart. Now, coming back to the question that Vijay raised, which is, what do you do with the awareness that the client has got? Now, research shows that when you get an awareness, when you get an insight, your brain is flooded with what is called as gamma rays. And when you act on that by putting certain actions, that insight, that awareness gets anchored into that action. And so one of the things that we don't tell, we ask our clients, we partner with our clients to ask them questions around things like, what actions would you like to take now that you have got the insight or the awareness? How could you make them smart goals, for example, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant to who you are, and time bound, for example? We ask them questions around what kind of resources you need to make those actions come true. And we also offer, as coaches, our own selves as resources. Resources are not only people, but they could be things like tools, for example. And we also ask the client questions around accountability. You have taken responsibility for this. How will you hold yourself accountable? So in many ways, as coaches, our job is to help them, assist them, partner with them through this process of insight, awareness, and then finally going on to actions and accountability. There's one important thing that I wanted to share here is that the awareness and insight is not only something that is for that specific problem, but it might have broader applications to other areas of your life. So let me give you an example of what that might look like. When I went for my voice lessons in Western classical music in singing, I had my voice teacher, Ken, who taught us how to sing using the diaphragm to breathe out and to have a relaxed throat so that our voice would project easily and freely. That same technique I have been able to use in the playing of my instrument, which is the saxophone, for example. I've also been able to leverage on that learning and use it in my training and facilitation programs. Even as I'm talking to you right now, I am putting into practice something that I've learned in a completely different discipline of mine, an awareness that I got in that discipline that I was able to put here.
Wow. That was super powerful, John. And, I must also bring up another example here with your permission, right?
Sure, go ahead, Vijay.
This wonderful client of mine, right? She was a wellness client who came in with very, I would say, specific transactional goals. Yeah, and I don't generally do goals like, I want to lose 10 kgs. That's a hard one for me. but something broader, right? She's a lovely, lovely person, right? And I've learned so much from her. Some way towards our, 60-70% of our time together. And she had got great awareness and everything. When she came into the next session, right? I felt something different. She didn't seem like, the person I knew in some ways, right? But I was not able to really put my finger to it. And then she said, yeah, have you noticed my stance? Do I feel taller? And she said, when I walk, I feel I am a few inches taller.
Wow.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Wow, nice.
I would love to feel for that at my height, but that apart, her whole stance, right? And in training, we call this a good stance. Your chest wide, your shoulders, nice and broad, your chin up, but that was the learning that she was doing in the other parts of her life, irrespective of where she was on her goal. So I don't know, I think we've come full circle in some ways, John, where we started off with potential and we spoke about this partnership and we said, client comes in with may not something specific, but what they take out is far beyond what they came in for. Yes. And I think with coaches, we are in such a wonderful profession that, we have this value add for us learning from our clients every day in some ways. Right? And so this goes back to something I learned a long time back in coach training from my mentor, which is about saying that coaching is not just about the what, but it's about the who as well. It's not just John wanting to improve his golf, but John becoming a better person through that.
Yes. Thanks, Vijay. That's beautiful. Yes. I, at least in my coaching journey, I can certainly relate to that. In fact, I told my mentor coach after I finished my coach training that you should have charged me more. Not for the coach training, but for the opportunity that I got to, just become a slightly better person. Yes.
More power to clients like you. Okay. So John, I think we need to do something very important at this stage as good coaches. Yes. Everyone here on this call as coaches, we often do something called a check-in. Yeah, where we check in with our client. And I think John and I did not expressly do it because I don't know, we just sensed we were doing okay, but we should have checked in with you. But I think this is a good time. We are at exactly around 60 minutes. So we'd like to check in as to how we are doing. So important because you could be assuming something and it could be something else altogether. I also note there are lots of questions coming in the chat box. I promise you we will get to all of that. We will even stay back a little longer if required. You know, if that's okay, we can do that. But if you want the question taken right away, please raise your hand and we can come to that question. But in the meanwhile, let me just pull up a short poll that I have. And Anu, maybe you can tell us, are there one or two top common questions that are coming up?
Yeah, there's a lot of interaction on the chat I can see. There are some things which so I think there have been a few questions around what coaching is and what coaching isn't. So I don't know if you want to kind of take those. There have been questions around what's the difference between coaching and counseling. I also am clubbing a few questions in terms of what's coaching and consulting. We also have some questions about, so when does the coach start becoming a consultant? So similarities between coaching and a psychologist, for example. So some questions around that theme, which I can see.
Great. I think people got to look into the part 2 of our session. So all of that will be covered. So maybe we'll just run through that. And if there's something specific which is not addressed, happy to take that. But I saw one on trust, which I want John to answer before we move into the poll. I think it was from Narayana. He had mentioned about saying that this trust creation, takes time, and is there a way to shorten it? John?
Yes. That's a good question. Trust creation does take time. And I think what I've learned from the experiences of the greats before us is that it's important for you to be authentic to create trust. I think in your being authentic and you're accepting who you are and you're accepting your client as they are with their faults and warts and moles, you are able to be able to create that relationship where trust actually uh, um, fosters. There's a fostering of trust that happens. So yes, it's about authenticity, and I think as long as we as coaches can be authentic in the relationship, it's a good way for us to build that trust.
John,
Yes,
John,
sir. Yes, sir.
yeah. Can I, John Narayana,
Yes,
I just wanted to recheck this question more from the constraint of time that we have, both from the coachee and coach point of view in an organization. When the organization appoints you as a coach and you have a project which is time constrained, and building a relationship with an external team as well as an internal team, time is a constraint. How do you build the trust is the question. And secondly, when the team itself feels that probably the expertise that person has is very limited on that subject. That's my question, John.
so the second part of the question is that who has limited expertise? You have.
The coach has, let's assume the coach has a limited expertise and the coachee has better understanding of the processes at the point.
Okay. So thank you for raising that question, Narayan. For the first part, I would again like to defer to what I stated earlier. It's about authenticity. And you're right that in cases like this, it might take longer. But the more authentic you are, the more you are true to yourself and accept who you are and accept your clients for who they are, you will be able to um, uh, you'll be able to build up that trust. And you are right, over a period of time, that trust will get better and better. To your second question, whether when you are not a subject matter expert and the other person is a subject matter expert, my thing on this subject is as follows: that as a coach, the kind of skills and competencies that you learn and you imbibe and you work on enable you to coach anybody irrespective of subject matter expertise. So So it's not about subject matter expertise that makes you a coach. In fact, we have something to share with you on the differences of different kinds of interventions, and we will hopefully things will get a little clear at that point in time. But coaching is really about skills that will stand you in good stead no matter what the competence of your client is, and you will be able to coach that person through that situation.
Thank you, John. One more, Rida. Where is the thin line between a coaching and a consulting? Because the
Okay.
coach goes closer to business. At one point of time, will he turn himself as a consultant to the business?
So I'm just going to request you to hold on to that question because we have a, full section on that. Yeah. If you don't mind. Coaching and consulting and therapy and counseling, teaching, training, all of that, right? We've tried to make some sense of it and we will share that with you. Okay, so should we just, we just want to see how we're doing, everyone, so we can use the next half an hour meaningfully in service of what everybody wants, okay? So just launching this poll. Please participate. 1 minute. Yeah, is it visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Please give your most honest response. The first response that came was clueless.
I like the speed of the responses, Vijay. So right now, the sense we are getting is that decent understanding is about half the number of people, and 1/5 of the number of people either understand it very well or are just beginning to get the hang of it. So that's good. And about 10% have just a sense, and there are 2% who are still clueless about it. So there are 2 people who are completely clueless. And if you are, we are more than happy to assist you anytime. Please get in touch with us, and we will, help you with your understanding. Yeah.
Okay, so should we move?
I think we are okay, Vijay.
We're okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we'll
These people
continue.
have started to get the hang of it. Yeah.
Sure. So I'll just stop sharing the results. Okay. So we move on to the next section, which we spoke about, everyone. And I'm going to request John to start this, right? About, after listening to all this, one may wonder, right, whether coaching is for me. Or if I just twist the question a little bit, who is coaching for, John?
Yeah, that's a good question, Vijay. In fact, I just shared with Narayan about the fact that you don't have to be a subject matter expert to coach anybody on, literally any subject. Although there are many coaches who tend to position themselves either as leadership or executive or life coaches or fitness and wellness coaches. I've had the benefit of coaching, and I've been able to use coaching in a variety of ways to help myself. And I know that the number of clients that have come to me have ranged from, if you look at the slide that is there, from literally students to seniors and CXOs and MDs, for example. So I've had a whole bunch of people who have come for help. And I have used the process of coaching to be coached for myself on a variety of issues as well. So, when I look at this, it appears to me that coaching seems to be for literally everybody: students, homemakers, parents, right? I like that little old man there, including that guy there as well. Yeah.
He's my favorite too, John. And hopefully when we get there,
Yes.
we will be living it up.
Yes. So Vijay, what has happened is that when we started with a poll about expectations. And I think one big question that seems to be there in everybody's minds is this question. We have coaching, we have mentoring, we have consulting, we have training, we have teaching, we have counseling, we have therapy. Is there anything that I've missed out, Vijay?
Lost track.
Okay, but
So
we
what
have a whole bunch of things. So the question is that how does coaching differ from all these other interventions? Is there some light that you can throw on that?
Yeah, sure. But before that, as we always say in coaching, let's find out from the seeker as to where they are first.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So one more poll, but we promise you this is pretty much um, the last one. Yeah. And again, this will help us take this section and unpack it a little better for you. What do you think coaching is similar to? On ground response.
So mentoring is currently in pole position, Vijay, with 60% of the respondents. A third is in counseling. And then you have equal parts for consulting, therapy, and training.
So we have about 80 people who have voted in. It would be great to get everybody to vote in. So, because in all honesty, hand to heart, this is a question that most coaches wonder about at some point of time or the other. So I also saw a lovely question from someone in the audience. It's about saying, can I use all three tags at a point of time? And
All three,
let's say training, consulting, mentoring, all three tags at the same time. I know you do it, John, and I do it too, but maybe we should talk about that a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to be ending the poll and quickly sharing the results. So we know what our collective experience and understanding is of this one. So this is how, John, you were right. Most people think it's pretty similar to mentoring. And I think closer also to counseling, but seems to be, except maybe from teaching, with everything else, there is, 20-ish percentage.
So it's roughly evenly spread between consulting, therapy, and training, actually. Yeah.
That's right. Okay, let me just stop share, and we will now try and see what we can share based on our collective wisdom and experience as to how coaching is similar and how not with the other support interventions that we commonly know of. All these interventions actually at a very fundamental level are helping interventions, right? They support another human being. And I know this is, again, a simplistic representation, but something for us to anchor in. And that's the reason I've plotted this on a 2x2. So on one axis, you have the entire spectrum from telling to asking, in terms of what happens in that engagement or that process. And on the other hand, you have, a future and a past orientation on the other axis. So each of these interventions can be looked at as, as a combination of a time orientation and, whether there is asking or more of telling. And easiest one for us here to know is to start with coaching. I think after, the last 1 hour, you would have gotten a sense that we don't really go back into the past unless it is something that the client, needs to resolve for moving ahead. Yeah, to that extent. Which, the coach's questions are really not anchored in the past. And the other one, of course, is we as coaches ask a lot. There's no telling. And I think that's also part of our own standards as coaches and our professional ethics. Now, John, you know, maybe you can also talk, because you are, you know, you run a pretty successful consulting practice, right?
Yes.
Talk a little bit about consulting, and you know, what are the similarities, and where do the similarities end?
Yes. So if you think about this matrix here, this 2 by 2 matrix, and if you look at consulting, what it falls is within the quadrant where it's more about telling, and it's about problems that people have come out with that you want to fix for the future. And we have the likes of consultants, you know, the McKinseys, the Bains of the world that actually do consulting. Mentoring is interesting and different here because mentoring is more one-on-one, but again, it's all about telling.
In fact, I must add in, John, here
Right.
that you know, the other organization that you know, is a leader in the field of mentoring and coaching, which is European Mentoring Coaching Council, EMCC.
Yes.
EMCC actually looks at mentoring as a part of coaching, right? So in that sense, it's probably got the closest. But you know, in practical mentoring, the mentor is actually sharing, right, a whole lot of his own life and professional and personal experiences with the person who wants mentoring. So you're right. You're absolutely right. But it's probably the one that's, you know, closest to the world of coaching, I would think.
And maybe a question that might be arising in the minds of the participants is that, you know, why is that not such a good thing? And the reason why ICF focuses on coaching, which is about the future and asking, is because the belief is that one is that your clients know the kind of issues they have and the directions that they need to go, and they have the resources and the resourcefulness within themselves to be able to come out with it. And the second allied and as important answer would be the fact that your experiences might have little or no relevance to the kind of challenges that your clients are going through. Their ecosystem is different, their stakeholders are different, even the times that they're living in is different. So what you did 30 years back may or may not apply today. And therefore, you know, that would be a substantial difference between the whole aspect about mentoring and coaching. If you look at therapy and counseling, you know, one is about telling and it's past focus. Counseling tends to be more about, again, the past, but there is an element of asking there. And much of the work that we have borrowed from is also comes from the work of therapy. Like, you know, therapists like Carl Rogers, for example, or Jung and some of the others, Albert Ellis and some of the others, right? And we have borrowed some of those elements as well. And we have seen somebody like, for example, Carl Rogers, who took the whole aspect about therapy and telling and moved it to a more counseling aspect, even though it was therapy, where he resorted to by asking questions and giving reiterating what the clients were sharing, and thereby contributing to their collective healing.
Yeah. And you know, when you talk about Carl Rogers, the whole focus of the client-centered approach to therapy, right? Which is again so close to what we do as coaches, because as part of our coaching mindset is our client-centeredness. Coaching mindset, which is a very important competency for us coaches, not just allows us to be, you know, curious and you know, flexible and open, but also requires us to be client-centered.
Yes, I think that's a precious gift that he has given the coaches of the world.
Yeah.
This whole
and you know what, John, I believe each of these, right? Because having dabbled with many of these at different points of time, and you know, I continue to consult and mentor as well. But I think each of these interventions has their own place, and so sometimes we do have clients who come to us for coaching, and we believe together that probably there is something else which is better for that client.
Yeah.
Let's say a client comes to you and wants a solution in like a week, right? I would much rather recommend that he or she, for example, goes to a trainer, or I would think a nutritionist, right? Sometimes, because coaching, I think by its whole approach, is a long-term process. It's about solid, stable, long-lasting results, but you need to be patient, both coach and client. So which is why usually coaching engagements, coaching programs run anywhere from 4 to 8 months. And there are, I know, a few of them that run much longer.
Yeah.
Also interesting in this metrics is training and teaching. And I know there was a lot of interest, not so much in teaching, but training, right? Because I know a lot of us coaches are also trainers. And the reason we've not got it into this grid is simply because in all of these other things that we're talking about, it's the client who defines the framework, the problem, the goal. He or she comes in with something, right? And usually if you recollect going back to school, remember your teachers, or let's say when you go to a training program, where you're nominated or you opt in, you rarely co-create the goals. The goals are already fixed. The training and learning objectives are fixed. But to that extent, still, if you were to put it on this axis, it would certainly be in telling, and I would think closer to a present future kind of orientation, not so much of the past. So if you've got to fit it in, I think we can put it in here, but I'd be very uncomfortable bringing it into the grid. So yeah, so I think all of these has its own place, and I would say with pride that as coaches, we've borrowed a lot from all these disciplines. For example, tools, right? The whole framework of assessments, tools, usually has been in the prerogative of consultants. Part of consultants' bread and butter is his frameworks, her tools, techniques. So we too use it, and I would think there is a limited application because we don't use the tools to judge. But if it is in the service of client insight and discovery, certainly coaches also bring in relevant tools and techniques. So I'm not sure whether we've covered all those questions that came out in the chat box. If there's something that's not addressed specifically on these distinctions, please put it into the chat box, and we'll pick it up.
So my friend Zafar has asked the question between a consultant and an advisor. So Vijay, you want to share a little bit about what the difference between that is?
Consultant and an advisor? Yeah. So, okay, this is my experience, John, between consulting and advisory. I think in advisory, you are pretty much expected to give an opinion, a way forward. And the more and more, you get into on-ground consulting nowadays, consultants are also expected to give you an on-ground plan, not just stop with advisory, help you a little bit, partner with you on the execution piece, and really be with you to the last mile. And that's the change I'm seeing with the growing field of consulting. So a lot more partnership, I would think, is there in consulting. Yeah, that's the word. As an advisor, you're not partnering in an ongoing basis, but sure, you are expected to give advice that is thought through and that is ethical.
There is two questions which actually look similar, Vijay, and I'm going to throw it up and let's find out how we can answer that. One is from Irene and the second is from Prashant. One says that with the COVID situation, I observe many people taking up the coaching, not sure of their expertise. What is the difference between good coaches and average coaches? And the way Prashant has framed it is a little differently. I want to pursue coaching as my passion. How do I know whether I can become a successful professional coach? What characteristics do I need?
So John, sometimes we are intuitive as coaches. I think we were intuitive as facilitators. So there was this slide that, John and I put together on who is a coach. But we thought we would have covered that ground. So we, put it somewhere out. So if you've got a minute, I will pull that out. But John, you might want to, because I think we probably are what? We are getting closer to our.
We're about 7 minutes away from close.
Yeah. So I think we let me pull out that slide. I wouldn't want to talk too much about it, but maybe we'll just pull that out for you, and we'll just tell you what we believe. I don't know whether good or bad coach, but the role of a coach is.
Yeah, so as you pull it out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer a question that Anubhuti has raised. A participant asked me, a coach needn't be from the same field as a client. However, in sports, the coach is an expert in that sport. How does that work? What would your take be on it? When I think about some of the best players in the world, whether it's soccer, whether it's cricket, whether it's golf, for example. If you look at Sachin Tendulkar, he had a coach for batting. Now, to my mind, Sachin is probably the greatest exponent of batting in the world. Now, how could a coach do things any differently? So here's my take on this. I was once playing golf with one cricketer who was coaching other cricketers. And you must have heard of this guy. He's Venkatesh Prasad, right? Venkatesh Prasad was coaching the one of the Premier League teams in India. The format that we have, which is the very popular format. I can't recall the name, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And he was coaching. So I asked him this question, Venkatesh, and we were playing golf together. I said, Venkatesh, how do you coach them? How do you coach a batsman? How do you coach a bowler? And this is what he said to me. No technique. He said, John, when a batsman, so the question actually I asked him this, it's slightly different. I said, you come to the 50th over, okay, or the 20th over, 20th over, it's 20 over cricket, for example. And you have got to get, say, 20 runs. You are maybe the second last or third last batsman there. How do you keep your cool? And he gave a piece of advice which resonated very well with me. This is what he said. He said, I tell the batsman, do not worry about the next ball. Just focus on the ball that is coming to you and play it to the best of your ability. Be in the moment. Then I asked him the question, Venkatesh, you are a bowler. What would you tell the bowler who's bowling to this guy? He said, I would tell him the same thing. Just focus on that ball and bowl the best ball that you can. So you don't have to be an expert, but these are other things that you can tell a coach, a sports person, because much of the problems that people have who are so-called experts is not in the technical skill, but is in the problems in their head. And a coach can help sort out the problems in their head and allow them to reach their fullest potential.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, John. So I've got this slide out, which is about, who a coach is. And, I'm sure different coaches will add on different perspectives to this, but maybe this can give you a little bit of a clue if you're considering coaching for sure. So, oops, sorry. 1 minute, please. I think just. Yeah, is this visible?
Yes.
Okay. So, safekeeper, best trusted friend. And these are all qualities. Huh? I mean, don't sort of look at the whole role of a friend and be that instead of a coach. Thought partner. Master listener.
Very fine.
And, a cheerleader. You need to be doing that for your clients for sure. And I think a human being who is very self-aware. And the more, when friends ask me, so you only coach 2-3 hours a day, and the rest of the time is just free. unfortunately, most of the work is happening in the background. And the greatest work is the effort that goes into inner work. And as John said, and for those of us who know John, he listens beautifully. And he still says it's work in progress for him. But that's how it is. Every day, you can't hold space for another human being if you can't be human and humane yourself, right? And as coaches, we don't have horns for sure. We shouldn't. You ought to be very, very humble because, as John said, the client knows much, much more about his or her life than you ever will. And they have come to you completely bearing their all. So how much work you need to do to be able to hold that space and also take care of yourself. A lot of people in helping professions tend to imbibe a lot of the emotion that comes. So managing your own emotions is again a requirement for a good coach, taking care of yourself. Yeah, so these are some of the things that we had put together. John, you're on mute.
Yeah, so we are almost at the top of the hour, Vijay.
Yeah.
So
we can take questions, I think, take some of the questions that were there. If people are willing to stay back, we can do that for another 10 minutes. Otherwise, we can run our, hand over to Anu and we can run our final poll about how this went. And we are very much here to answer your questions. In fact, we even had a little video clip, something cute that we found from another organization that had put it together. We can share that with you, or we can take questions.
So, Vijay and John, and I think I may want to kind of take permission from everybody who's on the call as well. So there has been, the chat box is on fire. So many comments and questions, at times difficult for me to read each one of them. So in case you're interested, and if you want to really use this opportunity to have John and Vijay answer these questions and maybe even share some insights, if you're okay to kind of extend for about 10 minutes, then at least we can try and push in as many comments and questions as possible. So, yeah, so most people...
There's a demand for the video as well. Should we, John? I mean, it's not very, what do I say? It's not one of those professional kind of coaching videos, but I don't know, something about it, really tugged at our heart.
So is it okay to kind of quickly, address some of these questions and maybe...
Yeah, if time permits, then we can look at the video.
Yeah, maybe leave the link of the video for people to see it on their own time. Let's see how it goes.
Right. So how do we do the questions? Anu, are you going to...
Yeah, I have a few. So I think lots of them were about the differences or the similarities between the different interventions. I think that's mostly got covered. There are some coaches who asked questions about their practice and some things that they have been stuck with. Would you want to take some of those?
I'm just wondering if there are lots of those, maybe we can do a separate session if that's all right.
Sure. So maybe I'll send you those questions which are to the coaching practice as such. So, but there are some who say that, so what's the thin line between when the coach turns into a consultant?
Yeah. John?
Yeah, so these things do happen. For me to say that, these things don't happen, I would not be honest about it. So there are times when our clients require specific inputs. And I'm reminded of the time that I asked Cindy this question, my mentor coach. And she said, John, do you know that even in a coaching framework, within the confines of coaching, you have the ability to support your client as a consultant? And so I asked her, how do I do that? She's saying, John, when you come to CC 9, 10, and 11, which is the old coaching competencies, you can offer yourself as a resource to that person. And the process of that could enable you to offer yourself as a consultant and offer advice, for example. And as long as you offer that advice without attachment and allow the client to choose, or, I remember my good friend Jagdish Kini, offering this piece of advice, which I found very insightful, which is offering the advice and then asking the client, now that you have the advice, given your situation and circumstance, how would you use this advice? Or what would you need to change or modify to make it work for you? So you could potentially do that within the confines of coaching. But if you don't want to do that, you could still become a consultant to somebody and still charge for your services. But that's not coaching, which is fine.
And one of the ways I keep myself in check is, as a coach, because what you said is very real, is I consciously work with people from backgrounds I have no idea of. And, so there's nothing you can advise them on. And so I think that I strongly recommend that to coaches on this call. Find spaces that and people you know so little about, and allow yourself to be in that zone of never being able to tell.
John?
So,
John
Vijay,
Narayana.
Yeah, Anu?
no, so there was a very connected question to what you just said, Vijay.
Yeah.
That many a times, teams or clients, there's a lot of resistance from them when they know that the coach has no domain experience in what they are wanting to look at.
Yeah.
Then, as much as you're saying as a coach, you don't need subject matter expertise, and you want to go into areas of coaching people who would not expect information from you. But at the same time, you have your clients and some of the teams who are not comfortable taking on a coach who does not have their domain experience. So how do you really bridge this?
Yeah. John smiling. Reality, no, John?
No. Actually, I remember a time when I had to do a coaching demo in front of like 60 odd people, and this person coincidentally starts talking about adoption, right? And even though I may not be a subject matter expert on adoption, having adopted 2 out of my 3 children, I knew a fair amount of what adoption means. But I can tell you, Anu, that for those 30 minutes, I was completely focused on the client in their area of need without resorting to any expertise on my side. And the coaching session went off beautifully. So to those who insist on experts, and I know you're right, I come from a finance background, and I find that finance folks want me as a coach, which is good for me. But I certainly believe that they could do it somebody like Vijay from an HR background or from some other background as well.
Yeah, but the reality is, Anu, that clients. So I think it's just about client comfort, right? I mean, I know, and this is reality. I know there are requirements where they specifically say females only, even today, in a domain like coaching. Okay, and I, for one, I know this debate can go on: do men make better coaches, women make better coaches? I won't even. Point is, people have their own, I won't even call it a bias, right? It's just comfort. And so when a client says that this makes me comfortable, let's play with that comfort, right? Though, as John said, I would plant that seed in their mind, saying that, did you really get comfort from my background, or was it something else? Right. So in some ways, coaches like us, we also need to clear a few of these perceptions. But till such time the perceptions are there, I think we can work with the system.
There was another question, Vijay and John. It was about, do coaches really need to change their style or approach based on the coach's or client's personality?
I'll take that one, Anu. That's my favorite on that. So I don't know about style, but I for one, firmly believe in learning styles of the client. And as coaches, I think it's just very important, as part of the establishing the relationship, is to understand you know, the style of your client, and I mean the learning style of your client. And to that extent, I think if you can facilitate a space that allows for that learning style, you can, you know, and they call it the dance with the client, right? If your client's, you know, doing the jive, you can't be doing the Bharatanatyam.
That's
I
a
mean,
good
you can, right? You can technically, but I would much rather do the jive. John, what do you think?
John, one,
Yes.
Narayan here.
Yeah, Narayan has a question.
Yeah, one last question from my end. If the coachee is in a state of inertia, the organization itself is in a state of inertia, and a coach is asked to go and start the coaching process, what would be stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, at least in a bullet points? How do we start?
So
I'm
with the
looking.
inertia, which means is he interested, not interested in coaching?
Let's assume an organization. The organization itself is a pretty old organization, and they are not used to this current form of mentoring, coaching. And when a coach is appointed there, or an internal coach is appointed there, how does he shake this inertia through this process?
Hmm.
They are not used to this kind of process itself.
They're not used to the process of coaching.
Coaching itself. Maybe you can answer it a bit later also, John. Not an issue. This is a question which I have. It'll be useful.
Sure. You know, I'm more than happy to, you know, work with you on this, all right? But you know, just connect with me, and then let's think of some solutions.
Sure.
So one of the things we do is also, and that's where organizations, you know, who want to evangelize coaching and promote coaching come into play. That you do offer, you know, some sampler sessions, awareness building, right? And I think everyone needs to go through a conversation to really figure out and understand what the potential and the magic is. So that's something that I usually, you know, for a very resistance kind of person, right? If the HR director is highly resistant, right? Get that person to experience coaching. And I'm pretty sure in 9 out of 10 cases, the person will convert. Yeah, so Anu, you want to just do the poll, because I think people are dropping off, and I also saw a lot of requests for the video, so I will keep the clip. You might just have to stay on for a minute or two. So maybe we can do the poll and then take some more questions. Anu, are you there?
So can I request Rajesh to, yes, I'm there. So can I request Rajesh to launch the poll, please?
Yeah. Just mindful of everyone's time and
Yeah.
Can you see that? Yeah. Okay.
And as you all answering the poll question, there's just one question. So, so Vijay and John, there was another curious question around. So, are there any KPIs for coaching, and how do you really evaluate the impact?
So when you say KPIs, this is it ROI or KPIs?
So, somebody asked, are there any KPIs for coaching? So, are there any key performance indicators for coaching?
Yeah.
Based on that, how do you measure impact?
So I go back to the work that I've done with corporates, for example, and the way corporates operate is that if they typically have a person undergo coaching, that person, there is usually a set of expectations that they have of this person. So for example, it could be a high potential manager, or it could be a high potential manager who's experiencing certain difficulties, or it could be a leader who is transitioning from, let's say, a leader level to a CXO level, for example. And there would be a set of issues or things that this person needs to work on, which is why they hire the coach. And then typically it's about working through that journey with this particular client, and then allowing the organization to then share as to where they see this person now vis-a-vis where he or she was at the beginning of the coaching engagement. So it's all about looking at those specific parameters which are very company specific, and then using those parameters to judge progress. But I don't think there is a one size kind of KPI that works in, for coaching assignments.
So I think it will be very mutually understood between the client and the coach.
Yes.
In terms of where they are and where they want to go, and what's the what's the distance that they want to cover.
And I meant in the context of corporate assignments, but if it is individual assignments, what you're saying, Anu, is absolutely right.
Right. Okay. Great. I think we will hold the questions for now. And I do know that there are some more questions there on the chat box. So I will maybe, send them across to you for you to kind of answer these questions.
Sure.
And yes, there are lots of questions from coaches in terms of how they should be and how they should work. So I think maybe this is giving me an idea in terms of having a, separate webinar for coaches themselves. So I don't think I'll keep you anymore. I think we can play the video.
Yeah, and Anu, I just shared the poll results as well. So John, we can breathe a sigh of relief now.
Our participants are very kind and gracious.
I know. Absolutely. Wonderful. Okay. And if there's a next time, we will do better. Please send in your detailed feedback as well. Okay, so I'm just going to pull out that video and, as I said, don't have very great expectations, but it was something that we liked. Just 1 minute. Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, can you help me? Hey, how can I help you? I need to cross over. You want to cross over the stream? What have you tried so far? I tried to swim. I saw a fish doing that once. You tried being a fish? What else? I tried to jump high. I saw a bird flying over the stream. You tried being a bird? What else? I saw a beaver once building a dike and thought that might work. You tried being a beaver? Would you mind getting into the stream? What can you see? I don't know. Water? And my reflection. Excellent. And what do you see in that reflection? Is that a fish? No, it isn't. Is it a bird? No. Is it a beaver? It's not a beaver. So what is it? It's a fox. So you're a fox trying to act like others. The others do easily what I want to do. So a fox can't do it. No, there must be a way. Can you see a solution here? Indeed I can. Then tell me. Be a fox, my friend. I am a fox. Then act like one. What would a fox do? I don't know. Foxes don't have a skill for crossing over streams. And what are your skills? Foxes are smart, observe and adapt. Oh, great. So, now, show me how you apply them. Wait, look! The stream is decreasing! So what? If I wait 2 hours... I made it! Oh, thank you! You are a fox. Well done, my friend.
That was a lovely one, Vijay. Beautiful.
Yeah. So hope you all enjoyed it as much as we did. So yeah, great. So
Thank
on
you.
that note, should we? I know there are lots of questions. Feel free to write into us. And I must say, for those of you who've never experienced coaching before, in these times of these crazy times around us, I think Coaches for You is on a very noble mission to allow everybody to experience coaching, irrespective of whether you're a student, you're retired, you're a leader, whoever you are, right? And we have close to 200 coach volunteers, all who are trained in the ICF way of coaching, who are available to allow you to experience coaching, and more so to help you with anything that you may need support with. So if there's a topic or there's a goal, there is a problem, there is a situation that you want to work around, please come into the Coaches for You website. Right on the homepage, you can register for a session. So please feel free to try that. We would love to have some of you over as and when you feel you're ready and you need it.
So on that note, thank you so much, Vijay and John. I think it was a very, very enriching session. We have lots of interaction, lots of comments. And I am mindful of time as well. We are 19 minutes over. I would continue to say, yes, please, those of you who have not experienced coaching, take this opportunity and have a session with some of our masterful coaches. And we will continue with our educational webinar series. Our next one is scheduled for Friday, which is the 10th of July. So we will hope to see you there. And all the best. And thanks so much for joining in today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anu and Rajesh, for
Rajesh.
really helping us be at our easiest, I would think, in this.
Thank you, all the participants too.
Thanks for everyone. Thanks, Vijay, John, Rajesh, and all the participants. It really made it an extremely exciting session today. Thank you.